Joining us now, Republican strategist and former RNC communications director, Doug Heye. Doug, it's really good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I want to focus on the attacks on the Justice Department. And one note specifically, which I think is so striking. We've had a number of Donald Trump trials, 2 with juries. None of the people on those juries have ever come forward to tell us what it was like in those deliberation rooms. We had a conviction of Hunter Biden just yesterday. Already we've heard from 4, I believe, or 3 of those jurors from that trial. Why do we hear from those jurors and not Trump's jurors?
Well, I think there's a fear of, what we've seen with threats of violence. In some cases that acted out. And then obviously on January 6th. And the judge in the most recent trial for Trump said, do not talk about this now or for a long time, just as personal advice. And obviously they're following that. And I think that's the prudent, if sad, thing to do.
Why are Republicans okay with that?
I think by and large, they know politically that if they get in Donald Trump's crosshairs, it's not good for them. We've seen that with a lot of Republicans where Trump comes up with nicknames or other things for them, and they cross Trump at their own political peril. It's a very real situation.
So what's the future? Just let him do whatever he wants for as long as he wants to do it? Is let him stay in office for as long as he wants to stay in office if they're afraid of him?
Well, there are a few things. One, yes, most Republicans on Capitol Hill want Donald Trump to win this election, but they're also mindful that that would be a 4-year term, and then they're ready to turn the page.
You're talking about them being mindful. I have not seen any evidence of them being mindful of Donald Trump and reining him in at any point since Donald Trump has come onto the political scene and won in 2016. The goalposts keep getting moved farther and farther back. Why are you so confident that in, 4 years, if he wins again, they'd be okay? They would force him to step down and respect term limits.
Because there's no mechanism other than a constitutional amendment, which has to go through a very long process.
You're talking about mechanisms. I mean, I think people out there are worried that mechanisms aren't going to matter. If Donald Trump says he wants to stay and Republicans all say, yeah, that's great, and he has all the powers of the executive at that point, people are worried that there won't be a democracy left.
An 81-year-old president at that point with one term where the Constitution is very clear, I think Republicans on Capitol Hill are going to be ready to turn a page, some of them in their own self-interest to run themselves.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Why are you so sure?
Look, you and I have had a lot of conversations about Donald Trump. Full disclosure, I am not a fan, as you know.
I know.
I'll probably write in somebody else this time. But the process of, and Jake was talking about some of the votes today. Process can be sexy. It can also be very frustrating. We've certainly learned that with Donald Trump. But ultimately, this would require a constitutional amendment for him to stay. That just seems a terribly high bar.
I guess I'm just questioning why you're so confident in that, because every single norm up until now, you can talk about mechanisms, I'll talk about norms, have been broken. The politicization of the Justice Department, the fact that jurors can't come out because they fear for their safety, the insurrection on January 6th, there have been so many moments where it seems like, of course, Republicans are going to say this is just a bridge too far. You can't get behind a guy who says he won when he didn't win and is trying to tear down the system and break confidence in all of our systems, and yet they have completely gone alongside him. Marco Rubio is a good example of this.
Well, look, politicians are very self-interested people. And so a lot of these senators, members of Congress, governors, they want to run for president themselves. It's part of why we saw so many run against Trump, even if they didn't really go after him too much in this cycle. They want to run in 2028. I think they're confident that if Trump wins, it's 4 years and then out.
All right, let me get into the smaller picture. Just the talking points issue. With Hunter Biden getting convicted, we still heard a lot of Republicans saying, no, I still believe there's a 2-tiered system of justice, and Donald Trump has been unfairly targeted. In the conviction here in New York with the Alvin Bragg case, but also in the indictments for election interference and retaining and hiding classified documents. Does that hold water? I mean, it certainly does among Donald Trump's base. But what about the people that they need to get to win?
When the convictions for Trump were announced, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, swing state, pretty important state for this election. And somebody said to me as a big Trump supporter, well, this is great news for Donald Trump. No, it's not. A conviction for Hunter Biden, not great news for Biden or the Biden campaign either. And the reality is the NRCC is fundraising off of this. They see this as a good thing. Yes, it takes away a Trump talking point, but it's not one that's going to convince those swing voters or those double hater voters. They don't like Trump and they don't like Biden in North Carolina, Nevada, Arizona, and so forth. That's going to be inflation, what things cost. That's going to be the border, all those things that Biden is still so underwater on.
Do you think the fact that Donald Trump didn't, try to torpedo and did successfully torpedo the immigration deal is going to matter?
It potentially could. Look, I worked on immigration when I worked in House leadership. This was as good of a deal. James Lankford did a heck of a job in negotiating and really getting the White House to bend to his will. But it wasn't good enough for Trump. Again, that's a norm that gets busted, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it means we're going to continue down this very real problem at the border.
Let me ask you about something you just said a moment ago. You said you're probably going to write in somebody else because you don't like Donald Trump. But if you're writing in somebody else, isn't that essentially a vote for Donald Trump?
I don't think it's a vote for Donald Trump.
Why not?
Because it is very physically not a vote for Donald Trump. I wrote in Paul Ryan one time, Mitt Romney another. Honestly, I forget which time I did which. And the honest truth is I vote in the District of Columbia. I think Joe Biden's going to win that one pretty easily.
All right, Doug Heye, it's really good to have you.
You
and
too.
in person, no
Thank you.
less. Thank you for coming in.